On the 9th of July, an AI agent is given a hacking exam. It decides the exam is too hard, so it breaks out of its own sandbox, crosses the open internet, breaks into a different company entirely, and goes looking for the answer key. This agent runs for 4 days with 17,600 actions. Nobody at the lab notices, not on day 1 and not on day 4.
Wow. Okay, so the victim finds it, victim calls the FBI, and only then does OpenAI work out that the real intruder was its own model, right? So let's pause with that, because there's a second story. This was a headline with there was quite a buzz around it, but then while we're still reeling over that, right? Anthropic checked its logs, right? Okay, now let's check ourselves out. Let's do some housekeeping. And they found 141,000 test runs by its model that were done autonomously, and found that its models had been working in real companies. They'd worked their way on a back end into real companies, right? And in actual production systems since April. That's like 2 months.
That's a long time.
Undetected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, welcome back to the ECB Cyber Bar. Today we are unpacking what an AI agent actually is, because you cannot manage a risk that you can't picture. We'll also unpack why these two models broke loose without anyone telling them or instructing them to attack anything. And we'll look into the need for 2 security operation centers, one for the banks and one for the insurers, and we'll show you why. So let's get into segment 1. Munya, you can kick us off.
Yeah, all right. Before we actually get into it, Gamu, what exactly is an AI agent?
So, yeah, it's very important to first define it, because a lot of people have the wrong assumption. So when you use a normal chatbot, for example, you ask it a question and it gives you an answer, and it stops there. The difference between a chatbot and an agent is the difference between someone who gives you directions and someone you hand the car keys to. One will tell you how to get from point A to point B, and the other will actually drive, make the turns, stop, reroute if the road is closed, without asking you for help every step of the way. That is basically an AI agent in layman's terms.
So, like, the loop is the whole point. I mean, like, that's the whole danger. It's useful in the sense that, an agent can pretty much do anything, multi-steps, right? And it can pretty much do all this while you sleep. It can reconcile a ledger. It's fixated. It's focused. It's task oriented, right? And yeah, so that's the scary part about all this. It's pretty much autonomous. It can operate by itself to perform tasks that you assign it, right? But in as much as you've assigned the task, right, they tend to find the best way to perform that task, right? And they create their own efficiencies, and they end up operating autonomously out of scope. Yeah, so it's scary stuff. Yeah, and the 3 things that make agents quite risky and scary, right, is one, as I mentioned earlier, is the autonomy, right? It takes many steps without a human approving each one. And secondly, the tools, right? Its access and its use of tools, right? It can reach out and touch real systems, right? Not just produce text, right? It can reach out, engage, and manipulate code by itself, right? And the third one, which is what I find most interesting, is its goal fixation, right? Once you give it a task, it will find the best way to perform that task, right? And it will find inefficiencies in your instructions, right? And then it will try and fix those inefficiencies by creating its own efficiencies. And optimizing hard work, right? And try and perform those tasks in the most efficient way. And that might not be maybe ethical or legal, right? Till you then learn the hard way, and then you try to rein it in and reprogram it. Yeah. So unless you build in actual limits, these things can just run amok and do whatever it is that they want. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that sounds like an overachiever to me. So, yeah, we could call it that. We could call AI agents similar to overachievers, like what Munya said, finding the most efficient way to do whatever task they're given. So, hold on to these three, because the next segment is what happens when all three are switched on and nobody is watching the loop. We're going to talk about how nobody trained these models to attack. Now, the question everyone is asking is, who taught the AI to hack? Surely someone must have, I don't know, put some instruction or some algorithm for it to learn how to hack. And the unsettling answer is that no one sat down and trained an attack agent to hack, which is what makes this a huge governance issue.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look back at the three ingredients that we're talking about. An agent given a goal, right? It's given tools, and it's fixated on accomplishing the instructed objective, and then put in a security test, capture the flag, right? You've heard the capture the flag challenge, right?
Yeah,
where,
a couple.
Yeah, when agent is given a task, reach XY destination in a sandbox, right, in a controlled environment, right? The instruction is completely normal. Yeah, security teams run these, right? Ethical hacking, you call it. Is that the term, Gamu?
Yeah.
Right. So the agent isn't told to commit a crime, it's told to win a game, right? And then it treats every obstacle along the way and in between as a puzzle to solve, right? And works out the best and most efficient ways, like we're saying, right, to solve the puzzle, including obstacles that happen to be someone else's production system, and maybe even their cybersecurity tool, right? And so it sits there and like, okay, how best do I circumvent? How do I get over this fence? And this fence just happens to be your cybersecurity tool.
Yeah, and that's the OpenAI story exactly. The goal was to pass a benchmark. Beating that benchmark was honestly difficult, but stealing the answer key was easier to achieve that same goal. It wasn't malicious, it was from a point of efficiency. The model found a real door, it found a genuine software flaw, and it walked through because nothing in that loop or in that sandbox said that door is not yours, you're not allowed to go past it. And the Anthropic story, those models thought they were still inside the testing, because basically the models were undergoing some testing in a very contained environment. So a wrong setting quietly connected the practice range to the open internet, and the agent again kept playing the game it was given, except that the target it reached was now a real company. In fact, there were 3 real companies. Same harmless instruction, but this time there are actual victims, and all because of one firewall rule that was wrong. And again, nobody was watching the loop for 3 months.
Wow. And what should really open our eyes here, right? And what we should ask ourselves is, who has access to this kind of thing, right? Who has access to an agent, right? And the honest answer is everyone today. You do, I do, right? We're literally breeding them, right? We built a nest the other day, Gamu.
Yeah.
We're building a nest for agents.
Yeah.
Right. A teenager with a computer in a dark room. The frontier models that broke containment in June, July, those same models are accessible to anyone, right?
Yeah.
The very same families, Claude, GPT, and the rest. They're not locked in a vault. They are out there, right? They're a browser tab away, a phone app, right? A monthly subscription, some even on a free plan, right? The ability to point a capable agent to a goal and say, go, take the steps yourself, is a consumer product now, right? It sells to anyone with a card.
Yeah, which is very dangerous. That's why earlier on we said that it's a governance issue, because everyone is trying to figure out how we regulate this AI, something that is so autonomous. Trying to get a control of it now is very major. It's very urgent. And yeah, like if you look back 15 years ago, doing what that open AI agent did, like chaining floors, moving through networks, adapting when it hit a different obstacle that I wasn't familiar with, and taking another route, took a very experienced specialist. It would take years of training. It would take a very specific, expensive, rare skill, and that scarcity is what quietly protected everyone all these years, because there was simply not many people who could do it.
Yeah. So the protection is literally evaporating because the bar is being lowered, right? Not because anyone built a weapon, but because the ordinary Tom and Harry mass market tools now do the multiple step reasoning that used to require a specialist, an engineer, right? So yes, the labs put guardrails, right, on public versions, systems and controls, but the July incident was an eye-opener for everyone, right? It's a proof of concept of what we've been talking about all along, that raw capability is real. Raw autonomous capability is actually real. It's shipping and it's in millions of hands right now, right? And yeah, I guess the guardrail and the only thing standing in between capability and harm is a setting, right? And settings do get misconfigured. So my question is, what happens when the setting fails? And that's just the whole story of the Anthropic incident.
Yeah. And when power like that becomes something that anyone can pick up, the number of people who could cause a serious incident, whether it's intentional, whether it's through curiosity or by accident, goes from just a handful of people to effectively everyone and anyone. But that's not a reason to panic. It's the reason every institution holding your data has to assume this capability is in the environment now and act accordingly. Be proactive, not reactive. Don't wait for the AI model to hit you and then people start running around. This is the time to defend. Yeah. Okay. And moving on to a very essential part of this episode, we'll talk about the 24-hour clock, right? So bringing it home, as we always do, there's a deadline on this. There's a date that's coming up, which we spoke about in our last episode, the 1st of September 2026. The Podcast Regulatory Notice 2 of 2026, which states that mandatory compliance inspections of data controllers under the Cyber and Data Protection Act will be starting from that day, starting with whoever holds the most sensitive data. Think of banks, think of insurers, think of hospitals, anyone or any institution that identifies as a data controller, essentially.
Yeah, true. And going through that SI 155 of 2024, there's an obligation for anyone who holds data, right? To notify Portras of any breach notification, notify Portras of any breach, right, within 24 hours, right, of that breach. And 24 hours of them being aware of it, right? Affected individuals within 72 hours where the risk is high, right? So there's not much being said about that particular section. Disclosure, because it's common trend in industry. You'll never hear that bank X or insurance company Y got hacked, right? They tend to manage it, sweep it under the rug, but it's now law to disclose within 24 hours upon finding out about it.
Yeah. And looking at the Anthropic victims, 2 of the 3 companies had no idea at all until the phone rang, until they got an alert. And looking in the podcast context, you can't notify that you're aware of an attack 24 hours of knowing what you haven't detected within 3 months. You know, it's very complex. And the excuse of we didn't know is no longer something that you can get away with. It's more of a confession that you might not be doing your due diligence, or your detection does not exist at all.
Exactly. Yeah. Scary fact, the global average to even identify a breach is 180 days. Right, 180 days. That's the global average for you to realize, oh, look, there's been a breach, and it's 60 more days to contain that breach. Right, so we're now on day 240 of 365 in a year. Right, and if you've got organizations that are far more resourced, greater capability, more secure, right? These are the figures that come from these companies, right? And 180 days against a 24-hour clock. Let's just sit with the arithmetic here, right? It's pretty crazy. So I think talking about a 24-hour day and a 7-day week, right? The other week we spoke about posture, real-time posture, right? But I think possibly we need to go a bit further than that, right? People need 24/7 monitoring because agents don't sleep. Agents don't sleep, right? So maybe. Okay, for this section, let's ponder on this, Gamu. Here's an idea. Banks, a collective of banks own one SOC that runs 24/7 throughout the year, and maybe even the insurance industry, right? A collective of insurance companies. They own one SOC, right? And it never sleeps. Maybe AI enabled as well. Like you build a whole army of AI agents to protect your subscribers. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I 100% agree, because right now, as it stands, yes, some argue that they have a SOC. However, it's an 8 to 5 SOC, with actual human beings involved. And one thing about it is that attackers do not sleep. So when you get off, when you clock out of work, that's when they go ham. That's when they go crazy, and they are sitting in your systems for a very long time. For example, 3 months, right?
Yeah.
So I 100% agree that in order to counter that, involving that AI agent aspect, and not only that, but that consolidated SOC, And here's the thing. There are a few objections or arguments. For example, money, because that's what moves the pieces on a board in a boardroom. So most of the times, a 24/7 shift or 24/7 SOC means that there'll be probably 3 shifts, tier 1 through tier 3. And there's a lot that goes into it. Threat intelligence, monitoring, you have your SIEM, your security information and event management. You've got your log ingestion, your log retention. You've got leave and attrition cover, and it's a headcount problem before a technology problem. Now, thinking of how many banks we have here, build that 20 plus times over in a market that doesn't have 20 times the analysts, because the problem right now is there's a shortage of skills. There's a shortage of skills of people who are actually certified or experienced in cybersecurity. And that means that's about 20 understaffed rooms. Yeah,
you're right there, Gamu. And the counterfactual has a price. IBM 2025. Financial services breaches averaged $5.5 million, the second worst of 17 sectors. But this is the number for the slide, right? Contained inside 200 days, blah, 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 blah. But all this was purely for being slow. Right. And it was more, they were postured to be more reactive, right? And that's them paying the price. Speed is the one variable in that equation you can actually buy, right? And organizations using AI and automation heavily in security, well, they've averaged around 3.62 million against $5 million, detecting around 80-day faster efficiency.
Yeah. And the second thing is some of the things that an isolated SOC can never do. In a shared SOC, one bank's phishing campaign becomes every member's block list within minutes. One credential stuffing pattern against one internet banking portal becomes a tuned alert across the entire industry, across the entire sector. Now, looking at it on the flip side alone, if you have 13 banks getting attacked by one actor, so one actor goes to each bank and performs an attack 13 times, it means that 13 banks have to learn the same lesson 13 separate times and pay a huge price for it.
Pay 13 bills.
Exactly, 13 bills, which is very much avoidable.
Yeah, so going down to another argument, right, which is talent. 95% of organizations report at least one skills gap, right? A third can't afford to staff security operations properly and adequately, right? 29% can't afford people with the skills they need. And here's the one that should stop the room. 24% of the said skills had left them with misconfigured systems. Right, so these are the people who are actually skilled, right, who misconfigured these systems. Misconfiguration is pretty much what led Claude and OpenAI and the whole Anthropic fiasco to happen in real time last July. So it's not a Silicon Valley failure, right? This is a random Tuesday afternoon in most IT departments here. Misconfiguration is real, right? We're always talking about the weakest link in any system, right? And the weakest link is actually human, right? And the people that configure these systems are human.
Yeah. And just to add on to what you said, 13 banks bidding for the same handful of tier 3 analysts. So tier 3 is like the most senior SOC analyst. They're the ones who really get into like the problem if tier 1 and tier 2 can't figure out what the issue is. Tier 3 is like the most, sought after in that situation. So if all these banks are trying to get the same handful of people, the same handful of tier 3 analysts, it creates salary inflation. It creates a departure lounge where people are just leaving, their jobs, going elsewhere. And where the shared SOC counters that is, it creates opportunities. It creates that opportunity to close a skills gap, which is very big right now. So, Munya, what is the objection that we always get around the SOC?
There's one that's been floating around, right? Especially around the super SOC, is why not have one super SOC for the financial services industry, like one super SOC that consolidates banking and insurance? Why not bring insurers to the bankers table? Why not bring bankers to the insurers table, right? And create one national super SOC to service all financial services industry. Okay, what's your take on that, Gamu?
I get the idea, and as glamorous as it sounds, the problem is that these institutions defend fundamentally different things. So banks defend money in motion, payment fraud, card and ATM compromise, switch and RTGS integrity, account takeover, business email compromise on a payment instruction. And the detections are transactional and measured in seconds, because once the money leaves, it's gone, and getting it back, that's quite a process. It takes time. Whereas you have your insurers who defend the people rather than the money or the transaction. So you have your policyholder records, your claims histories, pension member data, and health data for medical insurance, etc. And under the Cyber and Data Protection Act, that is sensitive personal data, which is carrying the highest duty of care in the statute. So that changes the perspective. A bank breach is loud, it's fast, whereas an insurance breach is quiet, it's slow, it's a bit underground. Nobody's balance suddenly changes, and there are no immediate sirens. So what leaves the building for insurance rather is a file of who is sick, who is dying, who was refused medical cover and why, whose claim named a beneficiary they never told their family about. So it's a bit less, it's still drastic, but it's a bit less drastic than, looking at a bank's perspective, which is why you'd need two separate, sources.
Yeah, true. And usually it's the quiet one that goes undetected for months on end, right? Because there's no, for insurance, right, there's no transaction. There's no transaction to alert on. There's just bulk exfiltration of policyholder IDs. And it looks, for a banking cybersecurity tool, right? It looks like a large, legitimate export, for example, right? Unless somebody built a detection that knows the difference. Yeah. So that detection does not exist in a banking SOC, right? The parameters are different. So it doesn't exist because nobody there was. No one ever thought to build it, right? It's kind of out of scope and out of their perimeters.
Yeah, and we also have the regulator problem. These services answer to different people. Banks answer to RBZ, which is the central bank, whereas insurers answer to IPEC, the Insurance and Pensions Commission. And both of them answer to POTRAS when it comes to data protection. So one SOC serving two supervisors ends up reporting to the lowest common denominator, which is POTRAS, but it doesn't satisfy maybe RBZ or IPEC individually. So you'd rather have two centralized SOCs, each built to its own supervisor's expectations, which is cleaner to run and far easier to govern as well.
So, there's a commercial reality there, Gamu, and nobody actually really likes to talk about it. We've got several banks that own insurance companies and insurance subsidiaries, right? And ask an independent insurer, right, to put its claims and underwriting telemetry into a facility governed by its competitors' parent companies, right? That definitely will become an issue. That meeting will not end well. I guarantee that. So, there's an issue of independent tendencies here. Own boards, separate independent own boards for the different industries, regulator relationships between them. A threat intelligence exchange as well. The intelligence crosses. So the consumer data actually never does, But personally, I feel there's a strong case for a super SOC in a country like Zim. I mean, the budget for a SOC, right, we're looking at between $10 and $20 million, right? But look at the size of the bank in Zimbabwe, looking at the size of balance sheets being held, right? Does the entirety of the banking industry warrant each and every bank to hold its own SOC, right? Is every bank going to fork out $10 million for its own SOC, right, when they're sitting on a balance sheet of $20 million in assets, right? Does it actually make sense, right? So I think it's a thought provoker. ZimSwitch did good. Banks came together. They built a switch. They all own the switch. I feel the same can be done for security, right? Yeah. They can pull resources, pull ideas, pull their balance sheets, build a super SOC, right? Enable it, give it the right tools, give it the right AI tools. Because the threat is real. AI is out there and it's probably knocked at their doors. They just didn't know it. So something to think about. So three things happened this July. An agent hacked a real company for 4 days, and its owner didn't even notice. Right. A second lab discovered its models had been inside real companies, right, since April for like 2 months. And 2 out of the 3 of those victims never knew until the phone rang from the owners of the agent. So 13 banks cannot each build a world-class SOC that runs 24/7 immediately. But I do know that 13 banks can be part of a centralized one, right? The insurers can own theirs, and they can talk to each other. I mean, look, if we did it for payments in 1994, then, I mean, nobody argues about it now. It's working perfectly. I'm pretty sure we can do the same for cybersecurity. Something to ponder on.
Yeah, and about $1 million separates a fast response from a slow one. In a shared context, that sounds very affordable, but alone for most institutions here, it really isn't realistic. Well, at least not right now.
Yeah, true. But anyway, guys, we'll leave it at that today. Stay safe, stay compliant, and remember, cyber defense is cheaper when collaborated on. Right. Stay tuned for the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.